Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Riya Gundari, Organizing Secretary for Clinoquium 2026. I'm glad to announce that we have exciting cash prizes for the events of Games of Clinic, Case Presentation and Dare to Demonstrate. Looking forward to see you all in great numbers on the 19th and 20th of June 2026.
Moving forward with the fourth cranial nerve, that is trochlear nerve. This is motor and function again. As we said, the superior oblique muscle and the lateral rectus were not supplied by the oculomotor nerve. So, superior oblique muscle is supplied by the fourth nerve. Here, you can remember it as a mnemonic LR6 and SO4. So, superior oblique by fourth cranial nerve. It is responsible for down and inward gaze. It is the smallest cranial nerve by diameter and it controls the superior oblique muscle. It is important for the action of depression and intorsion, that is inward movement of the eyeball. So for trochlear assessment, we'll be asking the patient to look downwards and inwards, that is towards your nose. Okay. And if we will be observing if the patient is able to depress the eye completely or no. We will be asking them about diplopia, especially while looking downwards also. Okay. So the clinical findings of trochlear nerve, they will have a vertical diplopia, that is diplopia in vertical gaze, that is downward and upward movement. So they'll have double vision. It is most common complaint that the patients present with. They would do a compensatory head tilt to correct this diplopia. They would have difficulties while climbing down the stairs and while reading because here is the specific function of your superior oblique muscles. This is a functional hallmark. This task requires depression of the eye. Diplopia worsens when head is tilted towards the side of the paralyzed muscle also. Okay, is this clear? Next, we'll be moving towards the trigeminal nerve. So, trigeminal, that is the fifth cranial nerve. It is a mixed nerve with both sensory and motor function. It is a very important and the largest cranial nerve. So the cranial nerve has both sensory and motor functions. Okay, what is the motor function of trigeminal nerve? Come on, I want you all to recollect. Yes, it supplies the muscles of mastication. And for sensory, it has three branches, the ophthalmic, maxillary, and mandibular. So the ophthalmic branch that has the sensory supplied towards the first half. This is the ophthalmic. That is the forehead, scalp, upper eyelid, and the cornea. This is important to remember. Maxillary, it supplies the cheeks, upper lip, upper teeth, and nose. This area is covered by the maxillary part. Third, that is mandibular, sensory to the lower face, jaw, lower teeth, plus the muscles of mastication. So this part will be a muscles of mastication. That is the motor part of trigeminal. Okay. The ophthalmic, maxillary, and the mandibular branch. Trigeminal assessment. For the sensory assessment, we'll be again checking it in the V1, V2, and V3 distribution separately with light touch with a cotton wool on forehead, cheek, and the jaw. So it will tell us about all the three different regions. Pain and temperature and pinprick or cold with a cold object will check for the temperature. We would be comparing both the sides symmetrically if that is present on both right and left side. For motor assessment, that is the muscles of mastication, we'll ask the patient to clench his teeth tightly and then palpate for the masseter muscle. For testing the jaw, opening against resistance. If they will be able to open the jaw against resistance. We will be also observing the jaw deviation and deviates towards the weak side. Because of the affection of trigeminal nerve, the muscles of mastication will be weak and the jaw would deviate towards the side of weakness. We'll be testing the pterygoid function, that is lateral jaw movements, if they are able to do the lateral jaw movement or not. Okay. So what are the clinical findings that we'll be able to see in a patient with trigeminal affection? There'll be trigeminal neuralgia. It is a sharp shooting, severe electric shock-like facial pain In the distribution of one or more divisions, that is V1, V2, V3, it can be triggered by touch, chewing, or wind. So normal trigger factors can also trigger for the trigeminal neuralgia. Okay. Thus the sensory part is affected. They will have sharp shooting electric shock like pain. Next, facial sensory loss. And in V1, V2, hereditary, it can be caused by demyelination, tumors, and trauma as well. Okay. Weak mastication, they're not able to masticate. And the jaw deviates to the same side, that is the ipsilateral side of weakness. We will be able to see wasting of temporalis and masseter muscles in chronic cases. That is over a period of time, even wasting would be seen. Next, that is absent corneal reflex. That is the V1 component because that was supplying the towards your cornea also. They would have an absent corneal reflex, afferent limb, because that was a sensory part. Afferent limb is affected. This risk, it can risk towards a corneal ulceration because they are not able to have any sensations at the cornea. It is important to understand that and educate the patient about the same. Jaw jerk reflex, it would be absent in LMN lesions and exaggerated in your UMN lesions. Next, so the last nerve for today, that is out of the first six, that is the sixth cranial nerve, is your abducens nerve. It is again a motor nerve. So we remembered it with a mnemonic LR6 and SO4. So LR6, so that is lateral rectus. It is important for eye abduction movement. It controls the lateral rectus muscle only. It is most commonly a paralyzed oculomotor nerve. It is the long because it has a long intracranial course, it can be affected commonly. Okay. What is the action of lateral rectus, if you'll remember? Yes, it abducts the eye, that is outward movement of the eye. Okay. So, lateral rectus, how are we going to assess for this nerve? So, we would be checking lateral gaze test. We will ask the patient to look to the extreme left and right and observe for the limitations in abduction. That is, if they are moving the eyeballs to the extreme corner, that is laterally, if they are able to move it or not. In patients with this affection, the eyeball would be set medially and they won't be able to track eye outward. Again, we'll follow the H pattern eye tracking and see for their eye movements. If they are having a failure to abduct the affected on the affected side. Diplopia assessment. Because now it is the horizontal movement, that is the function is lateral movement, the diplopia would be present in horizontal gaze. Okay. And even in cover-uncover test, when we alternate cover test reveals convergent squint, that is esotropia. The eyeball would be set medially. These clinical findings would be seen. Esotropia, that is convergent squint, esotropia, that is convergent squint. Medial deviation of the affected eye at rest. Eyes cannot diverge properly because they cannot be moved outward. They would be set medially at resting position. Next, that is horizontal diplopia. As we discussed, the horizontal movement is affected. It would lead to horizontal diplopia. They would have a failure to abduct the eyeball and they would have issues with localizing value. Non-localizing signs in raised ICP, false localizing sign, localizing in pontine or cavernous sinus lesions. So, the summary of the first six cranial nerves at a glance: olfactory, optic, oculomotor, trochlear, trigeminal, and abducens. We saw the key functions. So it is important to remember what is the key test to be done in each nerve, what is the key finding, and what is the common cause, why can it be affected. Okay. So for example, for olfactory, we saw the key test was smell identification. The key finding can be loss of smell, that is anosmia. And what is the common cause? It can be head injury. And very recently, we saw the COVID-19 affecting the smell. So this is the summary. Okay. So for every cranial nerve, it is important for you to remember the key test, key finding, and the common cause of affection. The cranial nerves, as we said, it is going to have an impact on your clinical importance and your assessment because it tells you about the early neurological diagnosis. It helps you in localizing your lesions. It helps our intervention planning. It helps us to monitor the outcomes. How is the treatment going further? What are the outcome measures and they improving over a period of time? And if there are danger signs, they are important to identify the red flags. So it will help us to recognize the red flags. And with the cranial nerve assessment, also it is helpful for interdisciplinary communication and discuss the cases among different medical fields. So these are the key takeaways that you have to remember. Cranial nerves 1 to 6 governs critical functions of smell, vision, and eye movement. Systematic assessment using standardized tools ensures accuracy and reproducibility in further future. So each nerve has distinct anatomy, testing method, and clinical deficit pattern in them. So it is important to identify that cranial nerve and assess for it because there is specificity. Physiotherapists must recognize cranial nerve deficits to guide safe rehabilitation practices further. And any abnormal findings require prompt medical referral and multidisciplinary management, right? So wherever we are finding any red flags, it is important to refer further and the treatment has to happen accurately and appropriately as required. So a thorough cranial nerve examination is the foundation of every neurological assessment. Yes, these are my references. Thank you. I would like to thank the team of PhysioTV for giving me this opportunity and the platform to share my views on the cranial nerve assessment 1st to 6th. I would like to thank my principal, Dr. Radha Bhattad ma'am, my HOD, the entire team of PhysioTV for giving me this opportunity, and Dr. Manisha Sangvi ma'am. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.